There is no official policy or law in the United States that prohibits immigrants from living in specific states. Immigrants, regardless of legal status, are permitted to live and work anywhere in the country, and they often choose states based on factors like job opportunities, quality of life, and community support. However, some states may have more restrictive policies or laws impacting undocumented immigrants, which can make living there more challenging. In states like Alabama, Arizona, Georgia, Indiana, and Mississippi, immigrants may face a less welcoming environment due to certain legislative measures, increased local enforcement, or fewer resources available to support immigrants. So, here is the list of top 10 states where immigrants are not allowed in the United States. Before we start, make sure you subscribe to the channel and comment your favorite state. Here we go. Number 1. Alabama. Alabama has implemented some of the strictest immigration laws in the country. In 2011, the state passed HB 56, which made it challenging for undocumented immigrants to live and work in Alabama. The law included several controversial provisions. Verification requirements. HB 56 required schools to verify the immigration status of students, creating an atmosphere of fear and suspicion. Employment restrictions. It was illegal for undocumented immigrants to work or seek employment. Housing provisions. The law even made it a crime to rent housing to undocumented immigrants. While some of the provisions in HB 56 were later struck down by the courts, Alabama remains one of the states where immigrants face numerous obstacles. For example, undocumented immigrants are not eligible for driver's licenses or public benefits, limiting their ability to live comfortably and safely within the state. Impact on immigrants. The policies in Alabama have created an environment where immigrants are often marginalized and excluded from basic services. Fear of deportation has discouraged many from seeking medical care, educational opportunities, or even reporting crimes, which in turn impacts their quality of life and safety within the state. Number 2. Arizona. Arizona is another state known for its strict immigration policies. Arizona's SB 1070, enacted in 2010, was one of the most controversial immigration laws in recent history. Known as the Show Me Your Papers law, it included provisions such as police checks. Law enforcement officers were allowed to verify a person's immigration status during stops if they had reasonable suspicion that the person might be undocumented. Employer sanctions. Arizona has laws that penalize employers who knowingly hire undocumented workers. Public benefits. The state has strict rules that restrict undocumented immigrants from accessing most public benefits. SB 1070 led to widespread fear among immigrant communities and created concerns about racial profiling. While parts of the law were later invalidated by the Supreme Court, Arizona still has policies that are challenging for undocumented immigrants. Impact on immigrants. The immigration laws in Arizona have had a chilling effect on immigrant communities, leading many to avoid interaction with law enforcement, even if they are victims of crime. This policy environment has also created economic challenges for immigrant workers, as they are limited in employment opportunities and access to benefits. Number 3. Georgia. Georgia has enacted several laws that make it difficult for undocumented immigrants to live and work in the state. HB 87, passed in 2011, was modeled after Arizona's SB 1070 and included the following provisions. Verification of employment. Georgia requires employers to use the federal E-Verify system to ensure that new hires are authorized to work in the U.S. Police authority. Similar to Arizona's law, HB 87 allows law enforcement to check immigration status during stops if they suspect an individual is undocumented. Restrictions on public services. Undocumented immigrants are ineligible for many state benefits, including welfare programs and driver's licenses. Georgia's HB 87 also criminalizes certain acts of assistance to undocumented immigrants, such as knowingly transporting or harboring an undocumented person, which has implications for both immigrants and those who may support them. Impact on immigrants. The policy environment in Georgia has resulted in fewer job opportunities for undocumented immigrants and limited access to essential services. The law has also discouraged immigrant families from seeking health and educational resources for their children, creating long-term challenges for immigrant communities in the state. Number 4. Indiana. Indiana has also passed legislation that restricts access to services and benefits for undocumented immigrants. Some of the notable policies include public benefits. Indiana restricts access to public benefits for undocumented immigrants, which includes health care services and financial assistance programs. Employment verification. Similar to other states, Indiana requires employers to verify employees' work authorization, making it difficult for undocumented immigrants to find stable employment. Identification and licenses. Indiana does not allow undocumented immigrants to obtain driver's licenses, adding a challenge for those who rely on transportation for work, education, and family responsibilities. In recent years, there have been additional pushes to enact even stricter immigration laws in Indiana, particularly around employment and identification requirements. Impact on immigrants. The restrictive policies in Indiana have created significant obstacles for undocumented immigrants, particularly in terms of access to employment and essential services. Without access to public benefits or driver's licenses, immigrants in Indiana face limitations that affect their everyday lives and overall well-being. Number 5. Mississippi. Mississippi has strict immigration policies, and the state has continued to pass legislation that limits access to services for undocumented immigrants. Some of Mississippi's key policies include E-Verify mandate. Mississippi requires employers to use E-Verify to check employment eligibility, which makes it challenging for undocumented immigrants to secure legal employment. Public benefits. Mississippi has restrictions on access to public benefits for undocumented immigrants. Driver's licenses. Like many other restrictive states, Mississippi does not permit undocumented immigrants to obtain driver's licenses, making it difficult for them to move freely within the state. Mississippi has also engaged in large-scale immigration enforcement operations, which have heightened fear within immigrant communities and led to a climate of apprehension among undocumented immigrants in the state. Impact on immigrants. The policies in Mississippi have limited the opportunities for undocumented immigrants to participate fully in the state's economy and society. The restrictions on employment and public benefits, combined with strict law enforcement practices, have created a challenging environment for undocumented immigrants, who often live in fear of deportation and other legal repercussions. Number 6. South Carolina. South Carolina has a history of strict immigration policies, which have created a challenging environment for undocumented immigrants. In 2008, the state passed the South Carolina Illegal Immigration Reform Act, Act 280, which implemented various provisions aimed at discouraging undocumented immigration. Key policies. E-Verify requirement. South Carolina mandates the use of E-Verify, a federal employment verification system, for all businesses. This requirement makes it difficult for undocumented immigrants to find legal employment, as employers are required to verify the work authorization status of their employees. Law enforcement checks. South Carolina's immigration law gives law enforcement officers the authority to check an individual's immigration status during certain stops, similar to Arizona's SB 1070. This provision has led to concerns about racial profiling and fear among immigrant communities. Public benefits. South Carolina restricts access to public benefits, such as welfare and health care, for undocumented immigrants. This lack of access to essential resources affects immigrants' ability to secure basic needs and services. Impact on immigrants. The restrictive immigration policies in South Carolina have made it difficult for undocumented immigrants to work legally, access health care, and feel secure within their communities. Many undocumented immigrants avoid interactions with law enforcement, including reporting crimes, out of fear of deportation. The policy environment in South Carolina has also created challenges for employers, who may struggle to find labor for jobs that local workers are often unwilling to fill. Number 7. Tennessee. Tennessee has also implemented strict policies that make life challenging for undocumented immigrants. The state has focused on verifying the legal status of its residents in various areas, including employment, driving privileges, and access to benefits. Key policies: driver's license restrictions. Tennessee does not allow undocumented immigrants to obtain driver's licenses, a policy that complicates transportation and employment opportunities for many individuals. In 2004, Tennessee briefly offered a certificate for driving to undocumented immigrants, but this was discontinued in 2006. E-Verify requirement. Tennessee requires employers with 6 or more employees to use E-Verify, restricting job opportunities for undocumented immigrants. This law is part of the state's effort to prevent employers from hiring undocumented workers, making it more challenging for immigrants to secure legal employment. Law enforcement authority. Similar to South Carolina, Tennessee allows law enforcement officers to inquire about an individual's immigration status under certain circumstances. This authority has led to heightened fear and distrust of law enforcement within immigrant communities. Impact on immigrants. The lack of access to driver's licenses has made daily life difficult for undocumented immigrants in Tennessee, as it limits their ability to commute to work, attend school, and access essential services. The requirement for E-Verify has also restricted job prospects, making it challenging for immigrants to support themselves and their families. The presence of immigration enforcement practices has created a climate of fear, with many immigrants avoiding interactions with authorities and public services. Number 8. North Dakota. North Dakota has fewer immigrants than many other states, but it has still enacted policies that make it difficult for undocumented immigrants to live and work there. The state's policies primarily affect access to employment and public benefits, making North Dakota a challenging environment for undocumented immigrants. Key policies. Public benefits restrictions. North Dakota has limited access to public benefits for undocumented immigrants. This includes health care, food assistance, and other essential resources. Such restrictions make it difficult for undocumented immigrants to access basic services and necessities. Employment verification. North Dakota requires the use of E-Verify for state agencies and certain contractors, limiting job opportunities for undocumented immigrants within government-funded projects. Local law enforcement cooperation. North Dakota has cooperated with federal immigration authorities in immigration enforcement efforts, such as 287G partnerships, where local law enforcement collaborates with Immigration and Customs Enforcement IC. This cooperation has created an atmosphere of fear and reluctance among undocumented immigrants to engage with law enforcement, even in cases where they are victims of crime. Impact on immigrants. The restrictive policies in North Dakota have led to limited access to services, employment challenges, and heightened fear among immigrant communities. The cooperation between local law enforcement and ICE has deterred immigrants from reporting crimes or seeking assistance, which can lead to increased vulnerability and isolation. The employment restrictions and lack of access to benefits also impact the ability of undocumented immigrants to contribute to the local economy and community. Number 9. West Virginia. West Virginia, like many states, enforces policies that can make life difficult for undocumented immigrants. Although it has fewer immigrant residents than many other states, the policies it has in place tend to be restrictive, limiting access to key resources and creating hurdles for undocumented immigrants. Key policies. E-Verify employment requirement. West Virginia requires many employers to use E-Verify, a federal system for confirming employment eligibility. This law mandates employers to verify that new hires are authorized to work in the U.S. which makes it difficult for undocumented immigrants to find legal employment. Driver's license restrictions. West Virginia does not issue driver's licenses to undocumented immigrants, which complicates transportation, employment, and daily life. Since driving is essential in rural states like West Virginia, this restriction creates significant barriers for immigrants. Public benefits restrictions. West Virginia restricts access to most public benefits for undocumented immigrants. This includes health care programs, welfare, and other support services, limiting undocumented immigrants' ability to meet their basic needs. Impact on immigrants. The policy environment in West Virginia makes life challenging for undocumented immigrants, particularly when it comes to employment and mobility. Without access to driver's licenses, many undocumented immigrants find it difficult to commute to work or access services, and the E-Verify requirement further restricts job opportunities. These policies have led to a climate of marginalization, as undocumented immigrants face limitations that impact their ability to thrive within the state. Number 10. Maine. Maine has a small immigrant population compared to more populous states, but the state has still passed policies that complicate life for undocumented immigrants. While Maine is known for its openness in some areas, such as allowing asylum seekers to work, its policies remain restrictive in certain aspects. Key policies. Public benefits restrictions. Maine has implemented strict eligibility requirements for public assistance, including health care and welfare programs. In 2011, Maine passed a law restricting asylum seekers and undocumented immigrants from receiving general assistance, which includes funding for food, shelter, and emergency services. This policy change has made it difficult for undocumented immigrants to access essential support in times of need. Law enforcement cooperation with ICE. While Maine does not have widespread 287G agreements, which formalize cooperation between local law enforcement and ICE, certain cities within the state do cooperate with federal immigration enforcement. This cooperation has led to fear among immigrant communities, as they worry that interaction with local police could lead to immigration-related consequences. Identification requirements. Undocumented immigrants in Maine are not eligible for driver's licenses, which limits their mobility and access to essential services. While Maine does provide identification cards to certain immigrants with legal status, undocumented residents do not have this option, adding a barrier to employment and daily activities. Impact on immigrants. The restrictive access to benefits, combined with limited access to identification and cooperation with federal immigration authorities, has created obstacles for undocumented immigrants in Maine. This environment has made many undocumented immigrants fearful of seeking help, which can lead to marginalization within communities. Although Maine has a reputation for certain progressive policies, its restrictions on public assistance and driver's licenses contribute to a challenging environment for undocumented individuals. Conclusion: the effects of state-level immigration policies. So, guys, this was the best list of top 10 states where immigrants are not allowed in the United States. Hope you will like it and appreciate it. While no state bans immigrants outright, certain states have policies that make it challenging for undocumented immigrants to live, work, and integrate into society. States like Alabama, Arizona, Georgia, Indiana, and Mississippi have enacted laws that limit access to employment, public benefits, and identification for undocumented immigrants, leading to a precarious existence for many immigrant communities. These state-level policies impact undocumented immigrants in numerous ways, including limited job opportunities, restricted access to education and health care, and a pervasive fear of law enforcement. While some of these measures are intended to discourage undocumented immigration, they often end up affecting the well-being and safety of entire immigrant communities, including those with legal status. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and press the bell icons for latest upcoming travel videos. Bye-bye. See you.